This is Leigh Kamman on the Jazz Party Line and a call to Herbs, home of the new faces and the top stars in jazz, currently appearing Nat Adderley, who just took time off from playing with the Woody Herman Sextet. Nat, I know you're there. You belong to a distinguished family of musicians. Welcome to our party line.
Well, thank you.
I know that your brother Julian Cannonball Adderley stands for the alto in the contemporary tradition.
Mm-hmm.
You for the jazz cornet, actually. Isn't that right?
That's right.
May we ask you what drew you to this particular instrument? Usually you find the cornet in New Orleans jazz.
Well, I got switched around in the concert band when I was in school down in Florida, A&M. They needed cornets to play the lead cornet parts in the concert band, and I got stuck with it. And incidentally, during that time, somebody stole my trumpet, so I had to use the cornet to make my dance engagements. We had a big band there at the time, and there it is. I got stuck with it, and eventually I grew to like it. So
that's certainly a matter of circumstance, and it's an interesting way to find your way to an instrument that you do like.
Sure, and I love it. I love it now.
Nat Adderley, thanks very much for answering that question about the jazz cornet in the modern sense of the word. And since accidents sometimes are, well, more or less like fate, we hope that you become the great figure of the shining cornet in the modern sense of the word.
Well, let me thank you very much, Leigh.
Another call on the Jazz Corner Party Line to talk with people who make the music. Nat Adderley's on the business end, and he's currently on stand at Herb's, located on Marquette between 3rd and 4th in the Milling City. Nat Adderley, I know you're there, and as a jazz cornet player, you naturally have been influenced by the men of the brass horns, probably modern players. Who are some of the people that have left their mark on your playing?
Well, perhaps the greatest influence I've had has been Dizzy Gillespie. I think John Burks is about the greatest around, an all-around jazz trumpet.
And probably one of the most consistent.
Well, let's say the most consistent to my way of thinking.
Who else has influenced you?
Well, I like Miles Davis because he's very lyrical. He's a lyrical thinker, and he chooses the right notes to play out of a chord. This is musically speaking. I also like him just because he sounds melodic, if that isn't too confusing.
Not at all, sir.
Uh-huh.
Who else has also helped to mold your style in playing?
I like Clark Terry. I like Clark Terry because his manner of phrasing and his tonguing is so very accurate. Perhaps the best actual trumpet player of the three may very well be Clark. When I say trumpet, I mean a finished instrumentalist. However, I still go back to Dizzy. I think that Dizzy is better all around.
Well, just for the sake of the record, to you, what does Dizzy stand for as far as the shining trumpet in jazz?
The thing is, I think that Dizzy has more of all of the qualities that I like than any other contemporary jazz trumpeter. This is to say that his melodic conception, his all-around ability, his trumpet sound, and all the things that go to make up a good trumpet player. I give these all to Dizzy and say that he's my greatest influence.
Nat Adderley, those are certainly some interesting off-the-cuff remarks concerning Miles Davis, Dizzy Gillespie, and Clark Terry. And to hear a musician talk off the cuff about some of the confrères who make up the picture of jazz, especially your favorite brassmen, is revealing, and we thank you.
Well, thank you.
Once again, Leigh Kamman on the Jazz Corner Party Line for KSTP Radio, sending out a few feelers in the night. Let's talk with jazz cornetist Nat Adderley. Nat, I know you're there. How are you tonight?
Fine, Leigh.
I'd like to just get your reactions to some names, places, and other items that are familiar to you as a musician. If I mentioned the jazz corner of the world birdland, what would you say?
I'd say it's a swinging place.
And if I say Quincy Jones, what do you say?
Well, one of the greatest arrangers.
And if I mention Count Basie's band?
Perhaps the most well-rounded band in the business.
And a gentleman by the name of Julian Cannonball Adderley, what do you say?
He's just about the greatest.
He's your brother?
Yes.
Well, that's brotherly love. Thank you very much, Nat Adderley, for those off-the-cuff remarks. We'll be talking with you soon.
All right, Leigh.
This is Leigh Kamman on the Jazz Corner party line, and a call to Nat Adderley. Nat is a young man of music, a voice behind the jazz cornet, and he's been influenced by Clark Terry, Dizzy Gillespie, and other trumpet players. As all musicians, there are influences, but Nat Adderley's style is unique. Let's ask him about a memorable young figure who is about the same age as Nat, who unfortunately passed away in an automobile accident. Clifford Brown was probably one of the outstanding jazz horn players of his time and age. Nat, what were your feelings about Clifford Brown?
Well, Clifford definitely was, had he lived, was probably going to be the outstanding trumpet player of our time. But it's very unfortunate, of course, his untimely death, and I feel that his influence has been so widely exerted right now that it's being reflected in so many of the young trumpet players, and the older ones for that matter also. Right now, that we can pick them out and hold them up and say, here lives Clifford Brown, that it sort of has an adverse effect on me, and that I don't want to sound like everybody else. But his influence is very widespread, and he was truly a remarkable trumpeter.
Thank you for that very fine tribute to the memory of Clifford Brown. The respects of Nat Adderley, jazz cornetist, a man who knows his horn. This is Leigh Kamman on the Jazz Corner party line from KSTP Radio in St. Paul and Minneapolis, putting in a call to Nat Adderley, a young figure behind the jazz cornet. Nat is a man who has opinions and convictions about jazz, and so we'll perhaps do a little survey of some of his ideas. First of all, regarding festivals, Nat, how do you feel about operations, say, like the Newport Jazz Festival? Honestly and off the cuff.
Well, I feel that festivals in themselves are very good for jazz. It, of course, attracts a larger number of people who might not otherwise get a chance to hear it due to the widespread publicity. However, I feel that the Newport Jazz Festival has become a sort of jazz circus that we in the trade don't particularly like, in that it doesn't necessarily show the public what the real good jazz is. It more or less picks out headliners of almost a bygone era and makes the headliners carry the entire show. We feel that this does jazz no good, and it really doesn't help the business, and it doesn't enlighten the public any. So I'm not particularly in favor of this particular festival any longer. However, I do feel that festivals in themselves can serve a useful purpose to our cause.
Nat Adderley, that's an interesting view, especially on the Newport Jazz Festival, which indeed this year seems to be a ranking-type circus with headliners galore and a program that would perhaps choke the ordinary appetite of any keen jazz fan. Once again, this is Leigh Kamman on the Jazz Corner party line from KSTP Radio in St. Paul and Minneapolis. Let's talk about the present state of jazz. And the man to do the talking is one of the newer faces behind the jazz horn, a man up in the brass section who has brought the cornet to the contemporary field of jazz, Nat Adderley. Nat, what's your feeling on the present status of jazz? Is it going someplace?
It's really going somewhere, all right, Leigh. I think that perhaps we're about to witness a revolution in this art form. First of all, in recent years, of course, the West Coast jazz scene, which has been the bigger of the jazz scenes incorporated all into one, has gained momentum so obviously that everybody's been affected by it. However, with the influence of young saxophonists particularly, like Sonny Rollins and John Coltrane and my brother, Julian Adderley, it's sort of turned around a bit, and I feel that in future times that the innovations of these three and others are going to affect the scene so much that it's going to completely revolutionize our art form.
There's a thought on the present state of jazz from Nat Adderley, jazz cornetist, who records for Riverside Records. You may find further research in the Mercury LP catalogs, all by Nat Adderley, in the field of jazz cornet. Thank you, Nat.
Thank you, Leigh.
A pleasure talking to Nat Adderley.